Hello, this is Jason with BDI, and in this video I'm going to show you how to run a test with STS-LIVE. So after you've installed STS-LIVE, you click on the desktop icon to start STS-LIVE. We'll give it just a second to start here. And let me pull this back down into the record frame so we can see what's going on. Now when you first start STS-LIVE, it always starts from the Settings tab. These are default settings, and you can go through and change all these, and I have a separate video that shows you what all these are about. But in this video I'm just going to use all the defaults and show you how easy it is to start running a test. So what I'm going to do is click right over to the Nodes tab. I can see that I have one node checked in right now. If you're running STS-LIVE for the first time and you've got everything set up and you get to this tab and there's no nodes listed here on the tab, there's a couple reasons that might be. One of the main is that the nodes have a power saving function that allows them to go to sleep if they're not connected to STS-LIVE. So if you were to turn a node on and let it sit there, it would go to sleep and it would wake up and try to connect to live, and if it can't, it'll go back to sleep again. So this cycle is 2 minutes, so it'll try to connect for 2 minutes, and if it can't, it'll go to sleep for 2 minutes, and then it'll wake back up again and try to connect. So if you don't have a node that connects right away, you can either wait for the sleep timer to run out and it'll wake up and try to check in, or you can hold down the silver power button on the node until the green LED flashes, and then it'll go ahead and check into STS-LIVE. So since this one's already checked in, I can just look at it very quickly and see that it has 4 channels. I've got a sensor plugged into each of these channels. And most importantly, I can see that there is an icon associated with each of these channels. So if I were to click on the individual channel, I can see that the type of the sensor is a strain gauge. And I can see that the calibration file has been loaded for this sensor. And I've got 2.56E plus 5 microstrain for the calibration factor. And I also have this icon over here that indicates that there's a calibration file that's associated with this, and it was able to recognize it. So this is something you want to watch out for. You want to make sure that there is an icon next to all these. If you ever get a question mark or a blank where there's no icon, it means that something happened when it was trying to load the calibration file and it wasn't able to detect that sensor correctly. So before you run a test, and if that's the case where there's a question mark or a blank, you want to check out my other video on what to do for loading up calibration factors for gauges. So since all these checked in and they all have a calibration file, we're going to go ahead and start a test. My favorite window to look at when running a test is the plots window. This is going to give us a visual readout of what is happening with the gauges in real time as we run the test. So I've got a list of all of my gauges, sensors here, and I can click on each one that I want to plot in this screen. Now when I record a test, all the sensors are always recorded. By selecting these, it's only selecting which ones will be plotted in this window as I'm visualizing this test in real time. So for right now, I'm going to select all of them, and I'm going to hit the green start button to start a test. So now we have a test that's running. I can see that the total running time is indicated here in this field, and I can also see that I have some traces that are appearing on the screen now. Now when I look at the axis on the left, I can see that I have a range of about 1,000 to negative 1,000, and it looks like everything is coming in right around 0, and it's just a straight line. Now when you're looking at gauges, each of them have their own specific units associated with a gauge. So for these strain gauges, I can see what units it's associated with by clicking back over onto the Nodes tab. I can click on the channel, and I can see that the strain is, the units that it's recording in is microstrain. So on the left-hand axis, the number that will be visual here is the units of microstrain. Now for this tilt gauge, I can see that I'm actually in units of radians. So since those are plotted on the same axis, I might only have a fraction of a radian movement, but I might have a couple hundred microstrain of movement. So sometimes it's best to only plot the groups of gauges that you're looking at, whether it's groups of strains, groups of rotations, groups of displacements. It can make it easier to look at, and it doesn't max out the scale like these are doing right now. So what I'm going to do is just only select one gauge, so I can see that this one gauge here, this 4123, the strain gauge, is plotting, and I'm going to apply some strain. So we can see that in real time, as I apply the strain, we see it dip down. I applied some negative strain. So I've let this test run for a few minutes, and after I've collected the desired amount of data, all I have to do is click stop. And that concludes this test. You'll notice that the plots are still available on this window, so you can visualize the last test that was run. You can use some of these features within STS-LIVE to zoom in on the data, as well as apply filters and FFTs. And I have another video that shows you some of the details of all the other features that you can do when running a test and after you've ran a test. And the last thing I want to show you in this video is where STS-LIVE stores the data after running a test. So I'm going to bring over a window here so that we can see where the data is stored. So in my C directory, I'm going to find a folder called STS user data. If I click on that, I'll see another folder called data. And underneath that is where STS-LIVE stores the data. So STS-LIVE automatically generates a folder for each month and year that a test is recorded. And then within that folder, it's going to record the actual test data with the date associated with it. So we'll click on July, and then the 5th of July, which is today, and we'll see the tests that I ran today. So I've ran a couple other tests besides the one that was in this video. And they're all indicated here. They have bridge tests, then they're going to have the date and the time that these started. And it's going to be a TDMS file, which you can open in Excel by clicking on it. And we'll see that we get an Excel window. Let me size this so we can see it in the record frame here. And this is going to have all of the information about the tests that we entered in the settings tab. It's going to give you all the channels that were available. And then we're actually going to have the raw data on the secondary tab at the bottom. So I'm going to have my time, and I'm going to have each sensor that was associated with that test, and then the data from that test. So like I said, this TDMS file, you can easily open it with Excel, but you can also use other programs to open it up in your data manipulation software. And this actually will ask you, if you close it, if you want to save it. You don't have to save it. The TDMS file is independent of Excel, so you can have 2 records of the data if you save it. I usually don't save it. I just used Excel to visualize the data. And that is it for running a test with STS-LIVE. Please check out my other videos.